So it's exciting to be using aviation apps on the iPad today. Foreflight has come out with some really cool stuff. Garmin has updated a lot of the stuff. So I want to kind of catch up on the video that I had done earlier on the two apps to kind of show some of the differences and get a more up-to-date video here. So we're going to start off with Garmin Pilot. One of the things that Foreflight has recently come out with is the dynamic map. So we can now start to compare dynamic mapping between the two applications. Garmin has stepped up and made some changes to their map, and they've also added Jeppesen charts, which is a huge addition to the Garmin Pilot app, and in my opinion, a major one. One of the things that I wanted to do is kind of compare the dynamic map feature, and then we'll kind of get into some of the other things. When in Garmin Pilot, one of the things, I'm zoomed in on Atlanta, and you'll notice that all of the airspaces are all listed here, and so it shows me what altitude restrictions exist for each of those areas. Now you'll notice here, if you're paying attention, that this area here is not actually showing up on the map, so I don't know exactly why that thing is not showing, and you'll also, it's a little strange, usually when I click on this, it actually highlights the area and shows me what the altitude restrictions are on it, but it's not doing that at the moment because this area here is actually 4,000. There it goes. I don't know why it was not doing it a second ago, but anyway, if you touch it and click on it, it'll actually show you and highlight the area that it's looking at. If I flip over here to Foreflight and we get in the same area, you'll notice that it is not giving me any altitude information at all. So the only way to get it is to actually click on it and go to all down here at the bottom, and then look up at the very top to see what the restrictions are. I know that Foreflight will be fixing this in the future release. This is their first version of their dynamic map, so we can't expect a whole lot from them. But it is really cool that they are starting to move in this direction. The other thing, if I go back over here to Garmin Pilot, the map in Garmin Pilot is actually a lot more customizable than you currently have in Foreflight. To get to some of those features, if you go to the layers button down here at the bottom left, and we go to our map and chart, you'll notice that we have VFR and IFR charts here, so we can flip back and forth. In Foreflight, you don't have the two different dynamic maps, you only have the one. So you don't have quite the features in Foreflight yet that you have over here in Garmin Pilot. Now, if I wanted to customize this map, I can come right here and hit this eye that's sitting beside the VFR option. And just as an example, right now you see all of the airspace. If I go to airspaces, I can turn on smart airspace. And what this does is it actually turns off all of the bolding that I get on all of the airspaces and only shows me the one that I'm most likely to get in at my altitude. Now right now it's showing me the surface to 12,000 because that's the area that I happen to be in, because I'm sitting on the ground at the moment. But if I were at 4,000 feet, it would be highlighting the area that we had chosen a minute ago. And then you also have, general things that you can change colors. You can go to airports and decide what sizes and when to show what, and nav aids and all that kind of stuff. So and then you just hit the done button at the top right up here when you're finished. So it has a lot more customizing that you can do. Now, if I go back to layers and we go to general, we have other things that we can come in here and change and tweak on the thing. One that I just recently found is the user waypoint visibility. If I turn this all the way up to 500 nautical miles, I can see my waypoints even at when I'm zoomed out to look at the entire country. So that's kind of cool. While we're at it, if I do zoom out to look at the entire country, you'll notice that you get these state lines that are kind of dashed lines for each of the states, and you get random cities that they give you on here, which I don't know why they're doing it that way, but one thing I think would be really nice if they would actually show me all the state names when I'm at this zoom level. But at the moment that's what it is. If we flip over here to Foreflight and zoom out at that level, you'll notice you get the same decluttering that you get on Garmin Pilot, but they're actually showing us the ARTCC areas, the center areas for each of the areas, which is a really cool feature. I think that's really cool. The problem is I think it ought to be an option there to be able to show state boundaries or this information, because it's rare that I need this. I guess if you're flying VFR and need to get in touch with them, but most of my flights are IFR, so I really don't need this information. So that would be kind of cool if they would do that. So as far as zooming and scanning, the both maps are working pretty similar. Foreflight still has the hands up advantage on speed. You'll notice if I start zooming in here on Garmin Pilot, well, actually they have fixed this. Well, no. So you'll notice my course line is gone over here, and all the detail is gone from the left side of the view, because I'm pinching and zooming and moving, and it's not updating until I actually let go. So we still have that lag there. If I do the same thing here in Foreflight, actually Foreflight has gone away. If I do the same thing in Foreflight, you'll notice that as I pinch and zoom and move, the map is updating in real time, and my course is staying there. So it's still a bit more responsive in Foreflight than you have in Garmin Pilot. Now you'll also notice, for example, if I zoom in here on KOPN, if I flip back over here and do the same thing in Foreflight, you'll notice there's actually a parachute area around that airport, and I'm sorry, in Garmin Pilot, but in Foreflight it's not showing it. Now I do have zoom in and you get the airport area here. If we do the same thing over here in Garmin Pilot, it's not nearly as detailed. So Foreflight seems to have a little bit of an advantage with the actual airport area, because it is a lot more. It shows me the side the taxiway's on, and it shows me where the FBO and all the hangars and everything are. So Foreflight definitely gets the advantage on the airport information that they're showing here on the map itself. So Foreflight's missing some of the airport information. They don't show parachute areas. They don't show some of the other things that you'd really like to see. If we come down here to Macon and we take a look at its information, again, I can see the Class D airspace here. But if we come over here and take a look at it in Garmin Pilot, you can actually see the altitude. So you can see the tops are at 2,900 feet. So at some point, I'm hoping and I'm sure that Foreflight will get some of that stuff added to the map, because again, this is their first version of the map. But they can't claim they were the first at this stuff, since Garmin has had it for quite some time. So rotating the map, changing the labels, all that kind of stuff's the same in both applications. So it's not really that big a deal. You'll notice the look are a little bit different. Up here in Foreflight, if I click this gear icon, I can change the map theme, the terrain. I can add terrain or take terrain off. Obviously, having terrain on is a really handy feature. One of the other really cool things about Foreflight is, and I use this a lot when I'm traveling, is I'll go in here to the street map, because I may have a couple different airport choices to land at, and I'll have a waypoint for the hotel or for where I need to go for that customer site. And I use the road map view to actually help me pick the airport that's going to have the closest or the best route to my destination. So it's Foreflight is much easier to research a trip than Garmin Pilot, because if I go over here to Garmin Pilot, I do have roads and stuff. So if I go to maps and charts and pick road and borders, I have no idea what bonehead came up with this as being roads and borders. It's completely useless. There's no road names on here. The airport information has disappeared. It's, I can see the KOPN over there, but I don't see Macon anymore. It's like, what is this and what is the purpose? So I have no idea why this exists inside of Garmin Pilot. The other really nice thing about Foreflight is that I can also just as easily take this and come up here and flip to the aerial map and add the aerial view over the top. And you'll notice that their dynamic mapping feature that they have is actually still here. So I'm basically looking at the dynamic map, the waypoints and everything else, along with a satellite view of the area that I'm actually going to be visiting. So that is a really, really cool feature that Foreflight has that is not available in Garmin Pilot. So we'll flip over here and take the aerial map off. Garmin Pilot is definitely got a hand up on the dynamic map. As I zoom out, this is what Foreflight looks like. If I go back over here to Garmin Pilot and we zoom out, this is the same area that you're getting with Garmin Pilot. So the two apps are, they're comparable, but right now Garmin definitely has got the upper hand. Now we're going to get into, and I mentioned this is something that I hope Foreflight at some point gets, but at this point this is killing Foreflight in my opinion. If I go over here and let's split this screen, you'll notice that these are Jeppesen charts. So I actually have the ability now to view Jeppesen charts directly in Garmin Pilot. This is also kind of a nice feature that I like in Garmin Pilot, is I can flip through these approach plates right here. I'm not having to exit the plate and go pick a different one. If I do this same thing over here in Garmin or in Foreflight, let's say that let's say I want to go to plates. And this is another thing that kind of stinks about Foreflight. If I wanted to get the approach plates for, say, KOPN, well, if I go over here to airports, I really don't have KOPN. I mean, I do, but let's say it's not in my favorites list, which, by the way, you don't have favorite airports in Garmin Pilot, which is something that is lacking over there, in my opinion. But if I don't have it over here, I don't have the ability to pick airports that are in my flight plan, which kind of sucks, because then I have to go back over here to the map. I have to open the flight plan. I have to go to nav log, and then I have to pick on it, and then I have to go to details to get onto the airport information so that I can then go to procedures, approach, and then let's say I want to pick this approach. So at this point, I've got the information here, but you see all the steps that I had to go through. If I go back over here to Garmin Pilot, let's say we go to it from the airport page. Well, by picking this icon here at the top with the airport identifier, I'm immediately given all of the airports that are in my flight plan. And then I can go to recents and I can search and I can go to nearest. And by the way, nearest is another feature that's missing from Foreflight altogether. They have no concept of nearest airports. So if we go back to Foreflight, it gives me the ability to easily choose the information that I'm looking for. So that's something that Garmin Pilot is doing a lot better on. Now, while we're here, though, you'll notice that Garmin Pilot is giving us magnetic variation and sunset and time offset, which is fairly useful. But how about CTAFs and weather channels? It would be much more useful than knowing that it's 3 degrees west magnetic variation. So I'm hoping Garmin changes some of their airport identifier and also bolds some of the stuff so it's easier to read. So you'll notice, flipping back over here, if we go back to airports, all of the information that I really want to know when I'm closing in on an airport is right there at the top of the page. I don't have to go anywhere to look for something. Now, also while I'm in Foreflight, if I go to FBOs, I have FBO information listed with fuel prices and other relevant information. I don't have anything like this. And also while I'm here, if I pick the FBO, it'll flip over and actually give me more detailed information all on a single page. If we do something similar to that over here and we go to FBOs, first I have to pick the FBO, then I have to go down and choose what it is I would like to know about that particular FBO, and then it will take me into another section for the detailed, and some of them will go even farther into the information. So for example, if we, well, it doesn't matter. But if we go to hours, it gives us our hours, but you're back and forth in this thing where Foreflight gives it all to us on one page. So it's much nicer. But again, if I go to our ILS approach, I have the ability now in Garmin Pilot to actually tell it to put that on the map. So we can put the approach plate here on the map just like we can in Foreflight. So that is a really handy feature, and again, it's my Jeppesen chart, which I'm very excited about having. But these things work, very similar to. Now this is another. Let's do that again, because that's something. Well, I'll just pick one and let's put it on the map. And you'll notice when I do this, if I do the same thing over here, so we're going to go back here. Close that, and we're going to go to procedures approach, and let's do the ILS, and then I'm going to tell it to send it to map. So we have the ability here to see the flight plan on the map, and then here I have the ability to either hide the plate or select a different approach. And we have the same capability. If you go over here, I have the ability to, well, if I pick the right icon, I have the ability to flip it to a different approach here as well. If we go and split the screen with all the approach plates, here I have the ability to flip through each of the plates to pick something. If we go back over here, I don't really have, I can split this screen with my synthetic vision, but I don't have a solo approach plate thing here. I have to use the map itself to be able to view this, which in a one sense is a bit of a dilemma, because approach plates they're not dynamic, and so when I have my track up, my approach plate actually comes in upside down and I can't read anything, so I have to change my map view. Where having a dedicated approach plate here, I don't have any of those concerns, so it's kind of nice being able to deal with that. And then also Garmin Pilot does not have the ability to display synthetic vision as well as the map, where you've already seen Foreflight does. So it is very, very handy to have your synthetic vision up at the same time you're shooting your approach, so that you can watch out for towers and other things that may be in your way. So Garmin Pilot is coming along a lot, as is Foreflight, so it's getting really exciting to be using these two apps. The other thing here is Garmin Pilot has actually added flight planning to the map page, and I think they're going to be coming out with some other exciting things here soon. But the flight planning is much more usable here than having to leave the map to go look at something. They don't have quite as much information here on this page as Foreflight has with respect to the flight plan. So both of them could actually have a few things here that would add to the program, and I have put in some requests, so hopefully one day they'll get to them. So, but it is really nice to have this flight planning here available on the map without having to leave. So I will close this. We'll remove that. So overall, both applications are definitely not the bottom of the pile. They both have really nice features in them. They're both very comparable. I do love the Jeppesen charts inside of Garmin Pilot now. The map in Garmin Pilot is a little bit better, even though, you know, as you zoom in on some of these airports, the airport diagrams are not always what they could be. They're not bad, but some of the smaller airports, they could be a little better. So the other thing is you know, I fly into a private airstrip. That airstrip ends up being hidden. You can see in Garmin Pilot, I'm zoomed in here on Atlanta, and you can see it hiding behind that short 1000 62 Golf Alpha. If I come over here to Foreflight on their new map, and let's get rid of some of this stuff we've got here, and we'll close this guy. So you'll notice here, I've got a waypoint up here, that 3 mile 1800, but I don't have the airport there. Unless I zoom in really close, and I mean really close, their 62 Golf Alpha has finally shown up. So it's, you know, not it's a little strange to have the waypoint showing up when the airport itself is not showing up, but again, I'm sure they're going to fix some of this stuff as they proceed forward. So, you know, it's a few of the other things in Foreflight. I've got Document Manager, which is really cool to be able to hold my favorite things that I, you know, would like to refer back to. Their weather in Foreflight to me is bar none. It's much nicer in Foreflight than it is in Garmin Pilot. Although Garmin Pilot has a lot of capabilities, they're nowhere close to being managed and as easily available, as well as some of the features that exist in Foreflight that just aren't available with respect to the weather inside of Garmin Pilot. So, you know, again, airports, the only downside to the airports in Garmin Pilots, they don't have a favorites. So I'm hoping that at some point they get that added. But overall, it's getting to be much more fun to use both applications. They both have a lot of capabilities and a lot of really cool features that are making flying a lot easier. So kudos to both of them. I'm looking forward to Garmin's next release to see what they're going to be doing. But you know, at this point, this is the updated video from the previous one that we had done comparing Foreflight to Garmin Pilot.